Doron Avital and Ariel Oseran with me in the studio. So, Doron, I know that in the past you have said you are against this latest operation to take over Gaza City. And we're talking about civilians who've already moved south and then moved back to Gaza City in some cases, aren't we? And we're talking about areas of a city that the IDF has already taken and conquered and then left. So just lay out for me, why are you against this last push to take the city?
First of all, to describe it as a last push is a little bit misleading, because there's no last push here. I mean, if we take Gaza, it means that we are holding Gaza. If we're holding Gaza, it means that we're in command of the Gaza Strip. It means that we are the occupying force. It means that we have now to stay here for years, trying to clear all Hamas operative. So the problem with this last effort, as they're trying to put it, is that it doesn't correspond to any concrete plan about the future of the Gaza Strip. And leaving this aside, of course, there's the context of the hostages themselves that would be, their lives would be put in risk, and take into account the fact that Hamas answered positively to an offer that we offered in the end, that we outlined.
The last offer.
Yeah, the last offer. Mm-hmm. So you bring all those things and take into account also the fact that I think that the IDF had command had its own reservation about whether to do it and in art fashion to do it. That's why we're doing it very carefully.
And just on the last offer, just so people are clear, that was a partial deal. That would have been 10 live hostages for a 60-day ceasefire based on the Witkoff outline. But the families of the hostages have said they don't want that. They want a full deal.
I don't think it's my strategy or the way I think about things, if you can get something in this uncertain world of ours, an uncertain campaign like this, if there's a possibility to get 10 live hostages, go for it. You don't know what's next. Then you'll have 60 days. In those 60 days, you can evaluate what is next. I want to remind the audience that the campaign in the north was completed so successfully.
In Lebanon?
In Lebanon, by an ex-deputy of mine, a soldier that grew up under my rank. And I think what was nice about this campaign was that we didn't, for example, cross the Litani, conquer the whole Litani Strip, or succeeded to push Hezbollah with brute force, but we did it in some stages, and in the end, this is a great success. So you have to put and introduce a little bit more intelligence.
But isn't the difference that Lebanon has a government and Israel could...
Lebanon has a government. It's a government that some of us in those panels were saying that we should also target, and we didn't, of course. We insisted not. We were very smart to distinguish between the Lebanese government and Hezbollah. We were very measured in our effort. And I think Gaza, after 2 years, and the general context in which Israel is in the global scale, this is part that the war doesn't just take place on those hills or on where the position of the last tank is. It's taking place everywhere. It takes place in Yemen, it takes place in Europe, in parliaments, it's taking place in the public opinions outside. Israel is not an isolated island. Israel is really part of the West. Part of the alliance of the West, part of Europe, part of the US. So we have to be much more measured and to think what's the next step and come with some concrete plan for the future of Gaza.
If I may, just on that note, I mean, European leaders have their own political considerations as well. Should Israel really take those considerations into account when making its own decisions about security?
Israel should be smart. And security, we learned from the 7th of October, the security, we don't achieve security by defending ourselves to death behind concrete walls. You get security when you are smart in the moves you make, those dynamic moves that contains also military measures and contains also policy-making measures. And I think this is where we miss. We don't have a strategic plan. We don't have even consensus within the Israeli public about the next move.
There's certainly a lot of division here. And I just want to talk about one thing. Perhaps you'd like to weigh in here, because according to reports, President Trump has given Prime Minister Netanyahu just a few weeks to finish the war in Gaza. He's very impatient to get it over. And at the same time, we've got a report in the Washington Post today about his plan for Gaza. He's calling it the Gaza Reconstitution, Economic Acceleration and Transformation Trust, or GREAT is its acronym. He's talking about basically moving all the civilians out of Gaza and building his big Trump Riviera plan. I mean, what has been the impact of that?
Yeah, it's a continuation from Riviera to Reconstitution. You can call it whatever you like. Ultimately, the plan coming out of Washington is to temporarily relocate the Gazan population. Now, we should note, this is the only war zone in modern history that the civilian population has not been allowed to leave. Now, it is not allowed to leave by Egypt. Egypt is closing the border. In fact, it is bolstering the border, mobilizing tens of thousands of troops to that border in order to prevent the Gazans from fleeing, something that is unprecedented. It hasn't happened in Ukraine, Syria, or Yemen.
I must object in some
No,
sense.
these are
It's not
facts.
like, not even fact. Of course, the Egyptians are not stupid enough to allow those.
But this is the only war in history that this has happened.
The argument doesn't. This is part of the Israeli-Arab conflict for years. Okay, we conquered the Sinai, we turned it, we stayed with the Gaza Strip. The Egyptians don't want the Palestinian problem to be imported to their borders. You can understand their logic.
No
I'm not
one
saying.
wants it, but why is it okay for a Syrian to flee chemical bombardment from the regime, to go to Turkey, to go to Jordan, but a Gazan is not allowed to flee a war zone?
The Syrian issue is not connected to the Israeli-Arab conflict. We have a conflict that started in 1948, or started years before, when my grandfather first came to Israel in the 19th century, and my mother was born in the old city. And this is a conflict between us and the Palestinians that had to be settled in some fashion or another. And if you think, or Trump thinks, or or Bibi thinks, that he can import the Palestinian problem to some other terrain, it won't happen in the end. And those Gazans...
But part of Hamas's strategy is to maximize civilian casualties. We know that. So by not letting those people leave, are they not being condemned to death?
Hamas is a concrete, is an enemy, a brutal enemy, and we fight Hamas. But if we think that we can eliminate Hamas by importing the Palestinian problem to some other hemisphere, it won't happen.
Well, that's the big question. Who will take in the Gazans?
Look, whether Egypt has legitimate concerns or not, this is the fact that they're not allowing them to flee an active war zone. And they're not alone in this. The entire Arab world supports Egypt in its move. Now, what are the implications of this? One, the continued suffering of the civilian population in Gaza, and this also hinders Israel's operational capabilities.
We are putting in danger the two pillars, the two great pillars of the history of the Israeli-Arab conflict, which is the peace with Egypt and the peace with Jordan. What you're offering right now, under the pretext that this is a sort of a war zone and let them go, is really to destroy the main pillar, the main achievement of the previous government, and this is the peace with Egypt. You have to be very careful. The whole history of this conflict...
But wasn't Egypt, to a certain extent, complicit in arming Hamas? I mean, they didn't get the weapons from...
And what about the money that we allowed through Qatar? So are we complicit? I mean, the story is complicated.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying Hamas...
I'm trying to say to our audience, the Arab-Israeli conflict is such intricate and...
that the rules, the usual rules don't apply.
Exactly, so you have to learn it from within.
Well, I've got to move on, guys. I'm sorry. Thank you both.